So yes, hurry up.
So Lee, Zach, thanks again for having us here on the show.
Yes, thank you for being here.
I see you've got a lot of different knives
We
laid
do.
out here on the table. You mind kind of walking us through what some of the applications might be?
Yes, so first let me say that the overwhelming majority of the time when somebody says they're struggling with something, they usually have the wrong type of knife. Whether they're trying to cut something or sharpen their knife, they're usually struggling because it's maybe not the best application. And let's face it, it's a complicated world with all of these different grinds and blade shapes. So it can be challenging to find exactly the right thing for the user. So what we like to do is that consultative selling approach and ask those questions. You know, what are you doing with the knife? And are you camping with it? You're taking it to work with you? What do you do for a living? You know, are you a landscaper, contractor, lineman, you know, something like that? You know, are we, you know, going camping and we need a camp knife and something to clear a little brush or to clean some game. So we have kind of an array. I have a mat with fixed blades and a mat with some folders on it. And I thought we would just kind of run through some of these various different blade types and shapes. So to kind of give an explanation, most people, when they come and look at a knife, they're drawn to the visual tension of the knife. And what I mean by that is many knives look elegant and kind of sexy, right? Like a sports car, right? Yep. Because of the lines and the shape. So many people look at that knife and go, ooh, that would be a great knife. I would love to carry that knife every day. Well, it is a cool knife, first off. This is one of our Due South brands. It's a trailing point pattern. It's a classic, ubiquitous pattern. This one was, this blade itself was ground by Alabama Damascus and Vice Cutlery. So it's real Damascus, and we put a custom handle on it. But this is a trailing point blade. Notice how high up the tip of this blade is. So this has a very specific usage. And if you carried this knife every day and tried to open Amazon packages with it, you would be frustrated with the knife. It wouldn't be the ideal knife for that application. However, if you were cleaning game, if you were skinning a deer or some other furry little animal, this is a great knife for that. So typically, what we like to tell people is that draw an imaginary line through the center of the knife, right? And where that tip comes out relative to that line is important. If the tip is above that line, then that's a knife you're going to want to do a sweeping motion with, right? So think skinning an animal. I'm holding the hide and I'm making this slicing motion. And I'm never puncturing anything. I'm never puncturing the hide. I'm never puncturing the intestinal tract because my tip is kind of protected. I'm sweeping. But you can't point this knife, right? Let's think about cutting a tape seam, right? So a tape seam is very hard to hit the tip, right? Because it's so upswept. So if I were counseling somebody to have a knife that they were going to use in an environment like where I work, cutting open boxes all day, scraping some glue off of something, things like that, a Wharncliffe blade shape is ideal because it's very easy to point this tip, right? Mm-hmm. Now, that though is a terrible tip for cleaning your deer. If you tried to clean a deer with that, you would punch holes all in the hide and the guts and everything else, and it just wouldn't work because every time you tried to sweep, the tip would puncture. Exactly. So let's think of one other task right quick. You ever take a piece of rope, make a loop, stick your knife in the loop and cut it like that? Yep. And it doesn't cut it all the way, does it? No. A lot of times it doesn't cut it all the way. It leaves just a little bit. And the reason for that, look at the motion of the knife, right? As I pull this way, the tip is falling away. So it doesn't cut that piece of paracord. Even though it's just 550 cord and our knife is good and sharp, it doesn't cut it all the way because the tip falls away. That tip doesn't fall away. That tip will cut it every single time.
And that'd be where something like that would shine as opposed to more of your curved blade.
Exactly. So some other kind of specialty knives. This is another one of our Due South patterns with a gut hook. this is a knife that is practical for game cleaning. Again, you'll notice that the tip has got some upsweep to it, but not quite as extreme as this one, because you've got to install the gut hook, and that is there so that when you hang a deer upside down, you can make a small hole and unzip him, and you never accidentally punch open that intestinal tract.
And I've done that before, and it's no fun.
It's not fun.
No.
It's not fun. This is not the way you want to clean the deer. We have some other hunting patterns. This is a knife by White River. This is the Tom Mack Hunter, and this is just an absolutely fantastic hunting knife. One of the things that makes this particular knife so ideal is it has really nice edge geometry. It has this very tall grind to it. It's already it's only about 1/8 of an inch thick stock, has a tall grind to it, so that gives it acute edge geometry. So to use kind of a slang term, this knife you will perceive it as very slicey, okay? It's not obtuse. Mm-hmm. So gives you a really nice, smooth, slick feeling as you're carving up game. This is a custom knife. This particular one is made by Tim Rowland, our resident artist here. Tim is a fantastic knife maker. This is one of his personal patterns. And as you see, similar to this trailing point, this one also is a trailing point with the height way, way up here. And so this too would be a knife that you would want to sweep with. It's got a short, compact blade. One thing that we do see a lot is people try to field dress animals with a knife that is usually way too big. A whitetail, you don't need a knife much bigger than that. That's plenty. That's plenty to field dress a whitetail.
Yeah, and when I see that knife, my mind kind of automatically goes to skinning out an animal. And
100%.
So, how does something like this maybe differ from this style?
Sure. So this is the Ashley Emerson game knife by Essie. Essie's a great brand that we represent here. It is a basic carbon steel knife, standard micarta handle. There's no bells and whistles like you get with a custom knife. As you see, Tim's got a tan liner and an orange pinstripe on his, whereas this is a much more simple build. The geometry is actually fairly similar on these two knives in that you have a tall grind here that's about the same as the height of that bevel there. This one's just got a bit more of an upsweep to it. This is a knife where if I needed to clean a fish in a pinch, that would do it as well. It's got a little bit longer, narrower blade, and so it's a little bit more suited for kind of a bird and trout type application.
Right. And so I see that these two have a little bit different handle material, right? And
yes.
So how does your environment that you're using it in kind of dictate what type of handle that you would like, or
Absolutely.
Handle material?
Well, one of the things that you'll notice is micarta and G10 are very common handle materials that you'll see a lot across many manufacturers. This White River is actually a linen micarta type product. It's actually got a couple of different colors that are layered together. What you're looking at is the layers of different colored linen fabric. This is also micarta, green canvas micarta. I've got an LT Wright here with a burlap micarta. That's a very popular product.
That was actually the material that I used to build my first knife.
Yes. Yeah. So it was popularized back in the 1960s for knife handles, but the product actually goes way further back than that. It was created as an electrical insulator by Westinghouse in the 1920s. And they needed something to be able to mount electrical circuit boards to that was non-conductive, that was very dimensionally stable, that wouldn't melt if it got really hot. And so micarta made with phenolic resin has been that answer. And so the product has been around for a long time, but it makes a great knife handle because it doesn't melt when it gets hot. It doesn't crack when it gets really, really cold. It shapes and works like wood, so it's fairly easy to work with. And it looks cool too. And it also is somewhat tacky when it gets wet. So another thing to just consider when buying a knife is if your hand is, greasy and bloody, right, from cleaning game. Do you need something that is tacky, or is wood okay, right? Is a smooth handle okay? So those are certainly things to consider. We use a lot of wood that's exotic woods from around the world that are really oily and dense. So they're woods that will hold up extremely well over time. If the wood is not dense enough, there is a stabilizing process that can be done to it, and we do that as well. We send material off to have that done to it. And so that is something that we do, and it will make wood pretty inert. It fills all those small pores with a resin that once you bake it, it turns hard.
So what does that process look like? I mean, if you had like a really porous type wood, are they kind of soaking the wood in
you
something?
immerse it in a vacuum. You put something heavy on it so it sits completely immersed, and then you draw a vacuum in the pot. And you can get about 27 millibars of pressure, and that kind of soaks up a lot of that resin, and then you put it in an oven and bake it. Cool. So it makes woods very dimensionally stable. So know this, that when you buy a knife with a wood handle, especially if it's a custom knife, that's been done to it so that you're not going to have delamination or the wood moving over time. Sometimes woods do have a lot of figure in them. For example, this is some curly maple here, and that curl is the wood fiber going like that, right? And so what you're going to get is movement in that if it's not dry and or stabilized, and so we make sure that that's been done. But to keep moving through the assortment of knives here, to just kind of tell you a little bit more of what else is up here, we now have kind of some camp knives, are the next set that I've pulled out here. And what makes a camp knife versus a hunting knife? Well, notice that our tip location is not a trailing point, right? It's not up above here. Sometimes it's in the middle, or sometimes it's slightly above middle, right? But most of the time it's at or near the middle in some way. This is a bit more of a chopper, and so it has not quite a straight back, it has a slight drop to it. But for the most part, a camp knife is going to contain a few very important features. The first feature that it's going to contain is a robust stock that it's made out of. Because a camp knife is one that you're going to be doing heavy tasks with, right? You might need to clear a little brush. You might be feather sticking, which is when you're taking wood and you're doing like that on it, and you're producing these curls of wood so that you have small wood fiber that can ignite easily to build a fire. And so having a thick stock is critical to that. Let's talk a little bit more about grind types. I have a Bark River here. Bark River is a very popular brand. These are also made in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and these have a convex grind. You see how it's axe shaped?
It feels exactly like an axe.
It feels like an axe, exactly. So that convex shape puts a lot of mass behind the cutting edge. Now, your perceived sharpness is not nearly as high as this Tom Mac Hunter, right? Because you have more mass right behind your cutting edge. So think about peeling an apple, cutting an apple, not chopping it, just cutting the knife through the apple, right? We all know what that woody, pulpy texture feels like, right? You're gonna perceive that as much sharper than that, even if they're the same degree of sharpness, right? Just because you have a lot more mass. However, this knife is going to be more robust in terms of mean things that you can do to it, right? I'm going to take my tree limb, I'm going to smash my knife in the top of it, and I'm going to wrench that thing apart until I've split it, right? These knives are something that would excel at that.
Right.
This is an LT Wright. This particular grind, so these are made in Ohio. LT Wright's a small company. They make a fantastic product. This is what you call a Scandi grind, and a Scandi grind is a single bevel. It's a short single bevel, and it is very obtuse, right? This Essie also has a Scandi grind. And a Scandi grind is exactly kind of what it sounds like. It hails from Scandinavia, where it originated. And most Scandinavian outdoor knives are all Scandi like that, whether they're from Finland, Sweden, or Norway, or Denmark. So Scandi grind is very popular. Another feature of these is a lot of times a camp knife will have a 90-degree spine, whereas other knives, you may want to soften that spine. So if you put your thumb out there to kind of bear down a little bit, it's softer. But on a camp knife, you may not want that because you may want to strike a fire steel. And so that hard edge right there is one you can really strike a fire steel and you're not worried about damaging your actual edge. So then we have a big camp knife here. This is our Mongo pattern. I just pulled this one out because I thought the handle material was really neat.
That's super cool. You got shark teeth.
Those are shark teeth, yes. Those are real shark teeth, and they're cast in resin. And we make that product here.
Wow.
This is also one of our handmade Mongo patterns. So this was hand ground here. It's a piece of 3/16 1075, and so it's a beast of a knife. But a great camp knife. So if you needed to use something for like a machete, clear a little brush. It will certainly make some firewood like the Dickens. This particular one is flat ground. So when I say flat ground, if you take a flat surface and you lay it on that grind right there, it will make contact across the whole thing. Whereas this convex grind would only make contact in the middle and it would teeter-totter, right? So you may also find hollow ground knives. And so we have some folders here. And without diving too much into the folders just yet, hollow grinds can be put on hunting knives, and some people may like hollow grinds on hunting knives. And the reason for that is because it has the least amount of mass right behind the edge. So if you're not cutting through something, you're just making those sweeping cuts, you may really like a hollow grind because your perceived sharpness will be much, much higher.
And so would that kind of come into play when you're trying to, separate out the seams of meat on a deer, for example?
Bingo, precisely. So, think about the geometry of a cleaver, for example. It too has this big convex edge, right? Because you're taking that cleaver and you're smashing it through bone, right? Or trying to separate where two bones are meet, right? So when you have a hollow grind, you have the opposite of that. So you have the weakest edge. So you wouldn't want to be taking your hollow grind knife and smashing it into hog bones, right? Because it has the least mass behind the edge. However, if you are trimming that meat, right, a hollow grind will do a very nice job.
Okay.
So before we go on to folders, let me just mention a little bit more about some outdoor knives. I've got a couple of fillet knives here. This one is made also by White River. We mentioned them before. They make this knife in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It's a fantastic product. It has a cork handle. It's featherweight. This is the classic gentleman's fillet knife.
Right.
So if you fish for stripers on Lanier or you go down to the Gulf, it's 440C. It's stainless. It's not going to rust. If you like snapper out of the Gulf, that would be the knife to take right there. The Meat Crafter is another fantastic knife by Benchmade. It's made in a number of different ways. This particular one has their coated blade and a carbon fiber handle. But what's cool about this is they use a really state-of-the-art advanced steel that enables them to grind this knife extremely thin. So most knives have somewhere between a 17 and say 22 degree bevel on it. This one has a 14 degree bevel. So it is a very, very acute knife. And so your perceived sharpness is extremely high, right? Because you have no resistance. So this is the Fruit Ninja knife, right? This is the knife you throw up in the air and you'll, throw the pineapple up in the air and you have a reindeer. Edge geometry has a lot to do with it. Another thing that you'll notice is these knives are ground thin and they have a lot of flex to them. So great for, let's say you want to slip the knife at the tail of the fish and ride down the vertebrae, right? This will do that beautifully.
It's going to kind of bend across
exactly.
the spine.
It's going to bend across the spine. It's going to do exactly what you want it to do, and it's going to make a nice clean cut and not destroy that fillet like a dull, crummy knife that we all have in our kitchen will do. Okay, so let's jump over to some folders. So this is just an array of the variety that's out there. And I like to kind of show things like this because it immediately illustrates that we oftentimes could have the wrong knife on our side or in our pocket for the task that we're trying to do. And that's not the end of the world, but we need to know that if there's something that's more suited to what we want to do. So here's some classic folders. We all know what this knife is. This is a Buck 110.
Grandpa's knife.
This is Grandpa's knife. That's right. This knife was invented in 1967. They were so popular, they were used as currency in Vietnam among American soldiers. Yes. The Buck 110 is a classic. It was the first lockback knife. So lockback meaning I can push that lock and the knife can close, and then it locks into place. It's a fairly simple mechanism. You would think somebody would have come up with that before 1967, but that's when they did it. But anyway, they still make the same knife the same way. They made it with these brass bolsters. It's a very heavy knife. Usually you don't carry this in a pocket. Most of the time you're carrying this in a leather sheath on your belt. So that's kind of a dated thing, right? I mean, who carries knives like that anymore, right? Folding knives anyway. So they make a modern version of that. For those of us that say, hey, I don't want that big, heavy brass bolster thing. Right. I want something that's sleek, that's thin. It needs to have a pocket clip on it. Also needs to be a one-handed open, so put a thumb stud on it, right? G10 handle, and they also use a premium steel, which is really neat in some of these. So they do make modern versions of old classic patterns, right? And what I call this is, that's the 64 Mustang effect. And what that means is, you know, once you have the design right, then it's right forever, right? You don't ever need to change the design. You might put different handle material on it, or you might dress it up differently, but the shape is the shape is the shape. And the Buck 110 is just a classic knife. You know, there are others that have made similar things over the years that are classic hunting knives. Boker does a really nice job. These knives are made in Germany. We love selling Boker product. It too is a lockback, so classic hunting style. And many people that love the great outdoors still want a traditional knife like this. And again, you wouldn't carry it in a pocket. You would carry that on a little leather sheath on your side.
And being made in Germany, I mean, just kind of talking to some of the old timers that used to carry knives like this, they're all about the German steel.
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, all steels are not created equal. The Germans certainly know what they're doing. European steels in general are very good. Of course, we make great steels here in the United States as well, but Böhler, for example, is in Austria. They make fantastic stuff. The German manufacturers make great stuff. So yes, you can pretty much count on a German knife having really good steel in it, anything made in Germany. This next one is a ZT. ZT is really popular amongst guys that are construction workers, linemen. The knife is really simply made. There are just two washers in here and two sides and the blade. So very few parts. It has a lockup like a Sherman tank. It is an absolutely beautiful piece of machinery. And a heavy-duty, hard-use knife. Some people like to carry these knives, great outdoors too. It's not just a working man's knife, but it's a practical knife because it uses a premium steel. It's got great ergonomics. It's a one-handed open. It's a flipper, so it's got good modern design to it. Another classic hunting knife is this Benchmade series here. They actually have this knife in a couple of different sizes with this beautiful cocobolo wood to it. They use an axis lock mechanism, whereas that uses a frame lock. So all I'm doing is just pulling this back, and that takes all the tension off of the blade. It's a handy mechanism. People really get the hang of it pretty quickly. It's easy to learn how to manipulate. Benchmade makes just a world-class product, absolutely. They have another one here. This one's called the Tagged Out. It also uses that axis lock mechanism, and this is an ultralight. So let's say you're backpacking into the woods, right? You're going to go hardcore. This would be a great knife to take. It's got a premium steel that's not going to go dull quickly, It's got G10 scales. It is a robust, well-built knife, but featherweight. So great knife if you got to pack it in somewhere.
Yeah, and especially backpacking, because I know those guys they're all about as light as possible. I mean, ounces matter. So
ounces do matter when you're backpacking and you're schlepping that weight on you all day long. That's a practical knife for that application. Plus, it's bright orange too. You can use it as a something to signal with. Lion Steel, we've mentioned them earlier. They're a classic manufacturer. They make an absolutely beautiful knife as well. We said earlier, if you like Benelli shotguns, if you like Italian food, Italian sports cars, you will love Italian knives. You can see that they do just a beautiful job machining. I'm pushing up the pocket clip there. So the pocket clip is integral to the knife. After you've pulled it out of your pocket, it sits nice and flat and flush.
I've never seen that before.
Isn't that neat? And so they also make this knife to where you can change it from a flipper to a manual opening knife if you go to a country that doesn't allow one-handed opening knives, because they make them in Italy. So they're sold all over Europe, and Europe has some of those laws. The last one is, this is a rat. This is an Ontario rat. This knife has been made for 25 years. It has that same 64 Mustang effect. It's a classic knife that is in in the annals of history as one of the greatest knives ever. But a lot of guys use this as an outdoor knife, as a working man's knife. It's a good camp knife. What makes it practical is that it has two steel liners. One of them is a liner lock, so similar to a frame lock, but that locking mechanism falls behind the blade and locks it there very simply to open and close. It's just a manual knife. Has a slightly upswept tip. So it is a knife that you could use to clean and skin game. And they are now making this in S35 VN, which is a premium steel. So as you can see, there's this array of stuff with different grinds, different shape, different blade shapes. Tip locations are different. And all of those things will affect how much you enjoy using the knife. So it's critical that that kind of gets analyzed. What's our daily tasks, and what are we using the knife for? And once we know those things, then we can kind of prescribe the right blade, the right geometry for what we're doing.
So obviously we went over a whole bunch of different options here. And so somebody like myself who enjoys to go out in the woods, to go hunting, love to go fishing, kind of just being outside really. Which of these styles and which of these blade types would you suggest would be my kind of like do everything knife?
Sure. Well, so it's a great question, because people say, well, I kind of do more of this and kind of do a little bit more of that, but I want a knife that I'll carry on me and kind of do everything. And so that is something that I tell people, well, I'll point you in the right direction. You need to try it. In what you just described, I would pick either one of these as a daily carry. I really would. Even though this is more specifically a hunting knife, it's a great daily carry knife. If you are going camping, it's nice and thin. It's geometry. It doesn't have a big fat handle, so it would be a comfortable knife to carry all day long, which is something you really need to consider. This is not a knife that will be comfortable to carry all day long. And you might look over here and be like, "Hey, that's the coolest knife." But even me, I mean, I'm carrying this big bushcrafter today, and the only reason why I'm carrying it is because we're field testing that knife, as we said earlier.
Right.
But if I were making a daily pick to do the task that you would, I would pick something more along this size as a daily carry. For a folder, I like a knife this size, even perhaps down to something like the Rat 2.
Yeah, so I've got.
There you go.
One of your Benchmades. I think I actually bought it here at the shop.
So this is a great daily carry. It's a practical knife. Tip location is good. It's even got a little spring assist to it, which is neat. That's where you push on the thumb stud and a spring engages it and it throws it all the way open. So that's a nice feature, because oftentimes one hand is busy, right?
Yep.
Especially if you're doing, especially if you're cleaning game, or if you're on a job site, You're usually holding something, trying to pull down a piece of insulation to cut it, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I love a spring-assisted knife like that. A really practical one. It's also not too heavy as well, so you can carry it with shorts in the summertime.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
another thing. This is not a knife that you would want to carry with lightweight britches on. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're not going to want to wear that with your bird wells on. But something lightweight, that would make a very practical choice. And one other thing to say about steel that's very a very important thing to mention here is we have a wide array of different types of steel that are on the table right here, and that is an extremely deep rabbit hole. Steel technology is changing rapidly. I tell people every day it's kind of like it's moving like medical technology. About every 4 or 5 months, a new steel variety will come out, and as soon as there's enough of it made by a particular manufacturer, a big knife maker will switch to it. So they'll go from S30 to S35, and then S35 to the 20 CV, and then so every time something new comes out, oh, it's MagnaCut, let's all go to that. And that happens a lot. I can help people boil that down to one simple metric, and that is, how much do you like to sharpen? Are you good at sharpening? If you're not good at sharpening, then let's get you in a steel that is easy to sharpen, that is not a major problem. Yeah. Every knife will go dull. Some will hold their edge much longer than others, but every knife will eventually go dull. I do like the ultra premium steels, and I'll kind of tell you a general philosophy that I tell people here in the shop as it pertains to a traditional carbon steel or one of these newfangled, super high-end steels. And that is this. So if I were going to go camping for a week and take my knife and cut tent stakes with it, clean the fish with it, do all the things that I'm going to do with my knife for the week, and I don't want to fool with sharpening it the whole time I'm gone. Well, these ultra premium steels will do a great job. They'll hold their edge for that whole week while you're real mean to it, doing all of these things, sticking the knife in the dirt and stuff, right? Because they have great edge retention, right? Very, very long edge retention. But you're not going to sharpen that casually, right? You really need a piece of diamond plate or a belted abrasive or something like that to sharpen with. Whereas a traditional carbon steel, 1075 carbon steel, that's the same thing that K-bars have been made out of since the Second World War. Essie still makes the knives out of that. We make a lot of our due south knives out of that. It's good steel, and it's a good product. It will rust if it doesn't have a patina on it or if it's not properly cared for. So a carbon steel is a little bit more maintenance. And so you might say, well, why would you want that when you have all of these other new boutique options of this ultra premium stainless? And the answer is very simple, because it's easy to sharpen. Yeah. The reason why K-bar still makes the K-bar out of a 10 series carbon steel is because if you're in a foxhole in some, horrible place in the world, right? Yeah. And you just had to open all the rations cans for your guys, and all you've got to sharpen your knife on is a rock, you can do it. It's doable with a traditional carbon steel, right? But you're not going to sharpen your knife on the edge of your car window or the underside of a coffee mug with this S35 VN that is in a lot of premium steels. I warn people that, our perception is, oh, this newest and latest and greatest must be better, right? Not necessarily. It's what's best for you, right?
When I was initially looking for this thing, I think this is S30V.
S30V,
yep. That's something that I really wish I understood and maybe would have listened to you guys about, right? Because, I could take this knife out in the woods for a week and a half, and it would be fine. As soon as you hit that 2-week mark, it's going to kind of dull, and I can't sharpen this knife.
Yes, it's more significantly more difficult to sharpen than your case sodbuster, right? And so it's definitely more of a challenge. And again, it's like learning how to play baseball. You don't want to try hitting for the first time and Nolan Ryan be on the mound smoking them by you. So when we say it's ideal to learn how to sharpen with a carbon steel, I'm talking just basic 1075, learn how to put an edge on something like that. And once you've kind of got that figured out, you know, you're hitting an overhanded pitch by a high schooler. And that's good, right?
That's
That's great. All right, let's go to the next level, right? And then, you know, you can kind of start to progress.
Good deal. Well, Lee, appreciate you taking the time and taking us through all these different types of knives.
Absolutely. As you can see, I love talking about this. I could do this forever.
I think it's been great. It's been very educational. I think
Good.
A lot of our viewers are going to really enjoy the content that we put out. So,
well, one of the things that's very important to us is that everybody know that's watching this video, please come see us at Old Town Cutlery. You will be welcomed into the door. We want to share our knowledge of all things knives and get you as enthusiastic about it as us. You can visit us on the web, oldtowncutlery.com. It doesn't really matter how you spell it because we own all the domain names and they'll all take you to the same place. We do have a YouTube channel. We do have an Instagram and a Facebook. So you just look at Old Town Cutlery and it'll take you right to it. We also have a weekly newsletter. If you go to our website, a little thing will pop up and ask you if you would like to subscribe to our newsletter. It's just me and MailChimp. I promise I'll never spam you. You'll get updated about upcoming events, of which we have several that are coming up. Knifetoberfest is a blast. We have an event here in the parking lot where people are doing forging demonstrations. We have a cutting competition. We have knife throwing and axe throwing, and food trucks come, and it's a blast. We give away a mountain of product. That is the second Saturday in October, and we'd love for you to come join us for that. Again, if you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get notifications second Saturday, and it will be from 11 to 3 is the event. So definitely come join us for that. And then, of course, fourth quarter is the crazy time of year. Everybody is trying to go hunting and enjoying the fall weather, but also while you've maybe have a rainy day or something like that, swing into Old Town Cutlery because that's the time of year when the mountain of product is moving through and you get to see
Get
some
in early, man.
Get in early.
We learned that waiting till the last minute
yes.
is never a good thing, right? We know
That's right.
with bows, with repairs, all these things, no different with cutlery, right? Get your hands on that early stock. Right. And, you know, Lee, this was fantastic, man.
Well, thank you.
The amount of information, I can count at least 10 tidbits that you dropped today that I just didn't know of.
Yes.
And that's the beauty of coming in here. You get that service, right? And the product. The product's phenomenal. So I want to thank you. I know you probably, this was for you.
Oh,
like,
This is awesome.
I'm just like, tell me which one I need so I can go do the work.
Yeah.
But,
and you know, just to belabor one other point is, you know, again, it is very much prescriptive selling. You know, we don't want to say buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this. If that's the wrong knife, then you go home and you're like, you don't have a positive experience. And so we want to build a relationship with customers for long periods of time, for the life of our business, and as long as we're standing up doing it, and as long as the customers still want to come in and see us. We want to build that relationship with people.
And that's what it's about, man. And,
absolutely.
And again, thank you for opening the shop doors. We will be putting all of the information to get in touch with Lee, the shop, and the events on our social medias as well. And we'll be sending out some of this information along in the show notes, both on the audio and the video. That way we know exactly where to send folks. Fantastic. Lee, it was an absolute pleasure, sir. We'll definitely be seeing you guys again. All right, guys, as always, this is Victor.
And I'm Zach.
And I'm Lee.
With Old Town Cutlery. First Tracks. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Appreciate it, guys.